I just want to introduce everyone to our professors really quickly. Here are our faculty members that teach the junior core, as well as electives that you can, supply chain electives you can take in the winter semester. It's one of those things that I didn't really think a lot about before I applied to the program. I didn't really ask a lot of questions about the faculty and the professors. And I realized it was a big bonus when I got into the program to realize that we had such great faculty members and professors. I would go into any of their offices right now and feel very comfortable sitting down and talking to them about my life, my goals, and I really consider all of them mentors in my life. And I think that's something really unique to the supply chain program, because we're a relatively small program and compared to other programs, that the professors really do know you personally and really care a lot about you. So with that in mind, I want to turn the time over to Professor Webb, who's been super involved with the students this year. He's going to talk a little bit about what supply chain is.
Hi, everyone. So, and actually, I'm going to wander around my office for just a second here, because I brought a prop. I love bananas. I've done a couple of triathlons, and I kind of found that nothing gives you more energy than a banana when you're in the middle of a triathlon. And I also love bananas because they really tell us about the miracle of global supply chain. So you see on this slide, we have people in Central South America that grow bananas on plantations, mostly harvested by hand. The last time I was in Nicaragua, we watched the people down there harvesting bananas and actually putting them on the back of carts pulled by donkeys to take them to the ports. Then they go to a container, or they go to a buyer, and the buyer aggregates all those bananas and puts them on a container ship. And a container ship comes to New Orleans, which is the banana port in the US. Here's the miracle. When you walk in a store, and these people are not social distancing, but when you walk into a store, the bananas are yellow. And that might not seem like that big of a deal, but when they started this supply chain, they're green. And really, they're not edible at all. I want you to think about the miracle that something that you pick up in the store that is just perfectly getting ripe a month ago was in Central America. How does it get here? And why does this miracle of supply chain happen? Who are the people behind the scenes that are making everything happen? And kind of what we see is, yeah, we have the growers, and supply chain's gotten really, really involved in making sure that small growers are not being left out, especially in the cocoa supply chain, which for a lot of years it's been really difficult because big buyers dominated this, and a lot of supply chains are now working with smaller farmers to make sure that everyone profits from their supply chains. There are these people that have to then get it to the buyers, and the buyers have to aggregate it, get it all together, get it boxed up on containers. Then these containers are sent to the United States. Again, someone has to organize all this shipment, figure out how many containers they need of these, sell them ahead of time. And then at the port, we have to have people to unload these ships, put them on trucks, take them to the distribution centers. And then 3 or 4 days before these actually hit the shelf, what happens is they bombard the room they're in the distribution center with nitrogen. And the nitrogen gas actually speeds up, it speeds up the ripening of these bananas. And lo and behold, just as they're hitting the shelf, these bananas are turning yellow. And you know, there's a lot of history behind this supply chain as well that's very interesting. Actually, in the the man who made the Port of New Orleans the banana port. He saw some bananas were coming into New Orleans and actually figured out a way to distribute them across the United States, and it built up so much demand for bananas that he became very, very wealthy. And when the government of Honduras changed over, he had so much wealth that when the new government announced they were going to start taxing bananas higher, he actually put together a small army and a former leader of the country and staged a coup. So you can kind of see the power and the miracle of global supply chain. And I'll add just one thing, and I just want to clear up a misconception that I hear over and over, and that's that business school programs and supply chain management in particular are really difficult to get into. And I don't believe that's true. Last year, of the people that selected global supply chain management as their first choice, in other words, it was the first choice they had in the business school, a little over 80% of those people got in to the program. And I've also heard people say my GPA is too low to apply. So the range of GPAs that we had last year that applied and got accepted into the global supply chain management program, the lowest GPA was a 2.7 GPA, and the highest was a 4.0. So you can see we have a really broad range. One last thing, and then I'll let Sophie or Marissa take this back over. We're going to get you really, really prepared in this program. I teach a senior class of all supply chain students that have done internships, and the first question I always ask is, what are we not doing at BYU that other schools are doing better than us? And our students are going to internships that they're competing with people from the very, very highest ranked programs in the country, Michigan State, Penn State, Arizona State, and they all come back and tell me the same thing. We are better than everyone. We're going to get you ready. You are going to suffer through the junior core. It is a really hard experience. It's something that's going to test you a lot, but you're going to leave really prepared. You're going to love your groups. You're going to love your teams that you're in because you have to rely on someone so much. Know that you are 100% qualified to apply. We want you to apply. We're all about passion. GPA, again, is not the most important thing to us. It is important, but we're looking at lots of different factors. More than anything, we want good people, just people that are easy to work with. And lastly, we really are all about family in this program. I can't tell you how many faculty meetings I've been to where the entire program is geared around, we want students to succeed. We want them to be well prepared for the future, and we want them to feel like their voice matters, that they're loved and accepted, and that everyone's opinion counts. So that's it. I did see one question on the chat that I'll answer real quickly. It says, what other things look good on a resume for the program besides GPA? Club involvement is big. On top of club involvement, if you have leadership experience or supply chain experience, those are super important. Next question I see is, what are some of the weaknesses of those that did not get into the program? Why did that small percentage not make it into the program? Please do not make this mistake on your application. And I will tell you, we are very invested in the people that are applying to this program. We get down to kind of the marginal people, so people that are rock solid, we know they're in. We look at real deeply at your resume, we look real deeply at your essays, and we had a few essays last year where people said, I am really excited to go into the finance program. And we said, great, if you're excited to go in the finance program, we're not going to admit you into supply chain. Or we looked at their resume, and their resume was clearly, they'd done like a marketing or finance type internships leading up to the program, but they never tailored that resume back to a supply chain perspective. So it still looked to us like we were their second, maybe third choice. The other thing is we did have some people apply that we stalked a little bit because they were marginal again. So I went and looked at your LinkedIn page. I looked at Facebook to see what you posted on there. Social media matters. And if someone's LinkedIn page said class of 2022 majoring in marketing, again, we thought, well, we want them to do what they think will make themselves happy, so we'd sooner they go to marketing. Any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate you tuning in.
Okay, now I think we're going to show a video that was made by one of our students in the supply chain program, just to kind of show a little bit about supply chain and get people excited. So let me get that.
All right, so that better get everyone really stoked for supply chain. There really are endless possibilities when it comes to the supply chain industry and what you can do. And getting a major in supply chain really is the first step to really springboarding your career into that industry. And we just want to highlight really quickly some of the statistics we are proud of in the supply chain program. In the previous I don't know how many years, but the last maybe forever, I don't know. We've had 100% job placement. And that's something really, really important as you're trying to choose a major, to be able to pick a major where you can actually get a job in that career field if you desire to do so. And everyone in the supply chain program, if they want to go into supply chain and have a career there, they're able to find a job in that. Additionally, we have the second highest salary, or average starting salary coming out of the Marriott School. Right now it's about $60,000. And obviously that really varies depending on what you're doing and depending where you're living in the country as well. And then a couple of years ago, we were ranked number 6 in the country in regards to our supply chain program. And I think that has a lot to do with the amazing faculty that we have and the professors and the curriculum that they have us go through. It makes us really well prepared to enter the workforce. So essentially, depending on what, you can do anything you want in supply chain. It's really a major that I think really changes the world, and it's needed everywhere in the world. I think right now is actually really a great time to think about going into supply chain, as we see right now supply chain is such a crucial part of businesses, and it's very much on the forefront with inventory being stocked, especially in grocery stores. It's one of those things that I think you don't really notice every day. You just assume you go to the grocery store and you'll have your toilet paper there, or your bananas or whatever you need. And then in times like this, we see how important supply chain is, and how really when things don't go as planned, how it can impact our lives. And so I think that's one of the reasons one of the things I love about supply chain is that you make a big impact a lot of times behind the scenes, and no one really notices. But it really, when things don't go well, it really changes the trajectory of a company. And here are just some of the companies that our students have gone to in the past or are currently going to. I obviously couldn't put all the companies, but here are just a few of the top ones. So if you want to go if you want to do consulting, we have students who do that. If you want to go into fashion merchandising, we have students who do that. If you want to go work at Nike and work on their apparel and buy apparel for Nike, you have that option as well. So there's a lot of great different companies that you can go to when you go into supply chain. Here, I just want to highlight a couple of our previous alumni who graduated in supply chain and what they're doing now. Sarah Morgan graduated a couple of years ago, and she is in fashion for Neiman Marcus. It's similar to like a Nordstrom, if you don't know what that is. And she's a buyer, so she's working with suppliers, she's negotiating, she's working with distributors to get product in the store, working on where you should place in the store, what SKUs you should keep, which ones you should get rid of. And so I think that's a really fun job for her. We also have Jake Hatch. He's currently a business analyst at Google. So if you're more into like the analytics and really want to dive into the numbers, there are options in supply chain for you. Or if you want to go more of a traditional route and go to a big supply chain company like Amazon, we have plenty of students who do that. They go to Amazon or Walmart, and you can work in logistics and really focusing on getting the inventory and products to the customers. So now I just want to turn the time over to Sophie, who's going to talk a little bit about if you want to get into supply chain program, what's the best way to do it?
Awesome, thanks, MJ. So yeah, we're just going to kind of go through the application process and continue on the chat. If you have questions throughout, someone will answer it, or we'll make sure to answer all of those questions at the end of this presentation. So in order to apply to the supply chain program, you have to take the prereq classes, which are Accounting 200, Finance 201, Marketing 201, and IS 201. And so like Professor Webb was saying, GPA isn't the biggest indicator for us of who's going to get into the program. That's not the only thing that the professors look at. Obviously, you want to do well in those classes, and those classes will help prepare you for the junior core. So just try your best. But you definitely, you don't have to have a 4.0. Don't freak out if you don't. Just make sure that you're doing your best in those classes, as well as trying to get as much experience as possible. And so that's when the essays and resumes become really important, because it's an opportunity for you to show to the professors, if you're going to be a good fit, what experiences that you have. And so we'll go through in more detail in just a minute about how to write your essays properly and how to format your resumes into a supply chain format. So a quick reminder on this screen as well is of the deadline. So make sure that you get your application in before the last business day in June. So that's here on the screen. So make sure that you have everything in order. Try to get it in as soon as possible so you're not waiting until the last minute. So now on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the junior core. So as Professor Webb was saying, it can be pretty intense. I don't know if you've heard about other junior cores in the Marriott School, but it's just like them in that you're put into a group of, I think, 5 to 7 students, and you're going to be doing a lot in that group. And like Professor Webb said again, supply chain is really like a family. And so you become really close with your group because in all of these classes that you have to take, operations management, logistics, purchasing, quality management, and then business development, almost all of your projects and assignments are within that group. And so you're doing a lot of meetings together. It's a lot of organizing and coordinating between a lot of people. And so the junior core is only for 1 semester in supply chain, and it's only 13 credits, but again, it's a pretty heavy load. And so I know students that just took the 13 credits in the junior core, and then I know some students that took classes on top of that. And I think it just comes down to what you know you can handle. Everyone's different. And so if 13 credits is your limit, and you have to factor in that it's going to be a lot of working in groups and a lot of time, then just do the 13 credits and you'll stay on track. You'll be able to graduate on time. So don't let that deter you from that. So if you have further questions, maybe at the end of this presentation, you can ask us about the individual classes, but that's what we have for right now on the junior core. So now we'll go into more detail about the resume. The Marriott School has a template that they have for your resume, and that's great, but if you can, we want you to use the supply chain template. Every major takes the Marriott School template and adjusts it a little bit, and supply chain's no different. So we have our own template that's really focused on quantifying results. So that's something that you can work on that can be challenging at times to kind of think back, okay, if you had a job 3 years ago and you weren't necessarily paying attention to how you were improving processes, then it might be a little bit hard to quantify those results, but the more you can quantify, the better. So just to help out a little bit, we do have a supply chain template of a resume that we will be sending out at the end of this presentation. There's a survey you can take. So if you're interested in getting that information, make sure to fill out the survey, and we'll send you the template, and you can just put your information in, and it can be official. So just go through your resume, try to quantify as much as you can, as well as using action words and buzzwords for supply chain. It's not like if you don't have those, you're going to be eliminated from the process of being accepted or not. We don't want to convey a message of you have to have a perfect supply chain resume in order to get into the program. That's not necessary. The professors are just wanting to be able to see where you worked and the impact that you had. And like Professor Webb was saying before, make sure you tailor your resume to supply chain. So let's say you're dead set on supply chain, that's awesome. That we know that there are some students that might be considering some other majors. And so if you're serious about supply chain, take the time to make an individual supply chain resume, individual supply chain essays, and really focus on that. Like at the top of your resume, if you put like pre-business student / marketing, then obviously that tells the professors that marketing is probably your first choice and you just forgot to change that on your resume. So make sure you review your resume and edit it as many times as possible. Have other people look over it, look for spelling errors and other things like that, just to make sure that you have a professional resume. So next we're going to be talking about the essays, which is a really great way for you to show your personality and who you are, because sometimes that's kind of hard on a resume to do that. So the essays are a good way for you to talk about experiences that you've had. That could include why you decided you wanted to do supply chain. Maybe you went on a plant tour through the club and that really sparked your curiosity and you wanted to learn more about manufacturing. Or maybe you know someone that works in supply chain and you talked to them and they showed you all the different opportunities that you can have in supply chain. And so that's what interests you. And so this is just, the essays are an opportunity for you to really explain why you love supply chain. And more than anything, it's a great way for you to show your passion. So you can show your passion through, again, your experiences, or maybe you're just a very organized, efficient person. If there's a way that you could illustrate that in an essay, that would really show the professors that you have the mindset of being organized and efficient and trying to improve processes in your daily life. So this next slide just has 2 QR codes with our website as well as our Instagram. And both are great resources to learn about what's going on in the club, because that's something that's really important to the professors. They want people that are passionate about supply chain and will come to our club events to learn more, because we have a lot of guest speakers that come in and talk about different opportunities in supply chain. So it's a really great chance to learn more about supply chain. So you can scan those QR codes if you want to learn more. And then this is the survey that I've mentioned a few times. So make sure to take this survey. It'll give us your information if you're wanting to get these slides as well as other information that we'll be sending out.
Perfect. And then I also want to mention that I understand normally we would have had a ton more club events on campus throughout this semester. And given the circumstances, we obviously can't do so, but I still want there to be resources available to you so that you can ask questions and you can feel like you're getting the help you need. So you can reach out to Sophie, is a GSCM guide, and she can, at that email, you can ask her any questions you want. If you also reach out to us at the supply chain email, we can put you in contact with other students and kind of make them your mentors for the next couple of months as you kind of navigate the application process. And they can help you look over your resumes, they can help you write your essays, you can ask them questions about what their careers are going to be like in supply chain, or anything you need. We just want you to know that we're here and available to help remotely. And we understand this is more of a unique situation and that we don't have club events that you can attend anymore. But I still think it'd be beneficial to reach out to students. And that's probably something you could talk about in essays, right? If you're pretty proactive, even now reaching out to students, I think that would, to me, that would be pretty impressive. So as Sophie said, please take the survey. If we're picking the top 3, we're gonna do a random name generator and 3 people will be getting a $20 Visa gift card. So if you fill out the survey, give us your information, and we'll also send out the slides and additional information such as like the resume template. So are there any questions that have come up? Professor Webb is a great resource right now to ask because he sits on the admissions board. You can either you can type them in the box, or you can just unmute yourself and you can speak.
I had a question on how the new pass-fail grades are going to affect the application process.
Yeah, that's a great question. Professor Webb, you want to answer that one?
I wish I could tell you. I don't know at this point. And everyone from the academic vice president at the university all the way down to me has been in meetings trying to figure out how it's going to affect admissions. At this point, this is what I know. It's not going to. We're trying hard to make sure it doesn't penalize anyone. We're trying hard to make sure that it doesn't, that it doesn't like pick a favorite, because I'll give you an example. Some students might have a B and choose to just take the pass because they're under such intense stress because of all this that's going on that they're just not functioning well. And so they'd sooner take the pass and not have to like totally dive into the class. We don't want to punish those people. This is a really hard, stressful time. So the real answer is I don't know, but no, we're talking about it, thinking about it, and our big emphasis is we don't want to penalize anyone.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. So I have a couple of questions here. I like this one. What's the best thing I can do to improve my supply chain now? That was the question sent to me privately. My answer was hire a BYU supply chain grad. Is there any benefit to applying early? We are not going to do selection until after the selections have closed. Accounting and finance do early admissions. We don't. We just want to look at everyone all at the same time. So really no benefit besides what I would actually recommend you do is get all of your admission stuff ready to go and then run it past Sophie or someone else in the program to just make sure you really got it locked down. Kyle Dungan asks, how should I talk about an internship starting in June? Go ahead and put it on your resume and think about, on your resume, just put that's your job at the present. And we'll look at that as, quite honestly, I know as a sophomore or our average, I think the average person had 1.5 internships last year. They're hard to get, and we understand that. So if you're just starting one, that's great.
And if I could add just one thing about internships, and Professor Webb kind of mentioned it before, a lot of people have internships in marketing, and I know a lot of OCIs or on-campus internships. The supply chain roles are really limited, and so a lot of people end up in either a marketing internship on campus or a finance role. And so it's okay if you have one of those positions. Just like we talked about when we reviewed resumes, try to quantify your results and make it as supply chain as possible, talking about how you improve processes or decreased cycle time or just things like that. So even if you have an internship that isn't a specific supply chain intern role, you can still turn your results or focus them on supply chain on your resume. So again, that's kind of hard sometimes. That takes a little bit of time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and people in the major can try to help.
So is there going to be another virtual info session anytime soon? So we usually do one a semester, well, not virtual, but an info session. But again, now with everything being a little different, I think we're going to host maybe more of an informal where we just have some of the supply chain leadership or supply chain juniors and seniors get on. And if you want to hop on and just ask, just chat with them and ask them any type of questions, we will provide some opportunities for you to do so, just so that we can kind of do a little bit more networking, give you some more opportunities that we now don't have physically on campus. Okay, so did you kind of talk about this, Sophie? How can you stand out as an applicant? Should the essays tell a story or be more straightforward? The essays are pretty short. Like I remember the word count is, you don't have a lot of words to really, you don't have a couple pages to write, right? So it has to be pretty direct and concise. But I think if you can make it into a story, that's always more entertaining to read and more memorable. Just remember, like the admissions board, like in any program, are reading through hundreds of these, and so as you tell it in a more of a story format, I think personally, I think it's more memorable. But maybe Professor Webb can speak more to that. You have anything else to add to that in regards to how to write their essays, Professor Webb?
Honestly, we read so many of these. Anything you can do to make yourself stand out is great. So I like the story idea, and quite honestly, we don't get a lot of those. And they make it more readable, but we are really looking for leadership, passion. We really like passion, people that love supply chain, and it comes across in their essays. That's huge to us.
Yeah, great point. What other questions are there? Any other questions that we can address today? And again, as these come up, please feel free to reach out to us. Sophie monitors the first email. I kind of monitor the second one, but someone monitors the second one in supply chain.
I actually do have a really quick question for whoever can answer. What percentage of supply chain undergrads from BYU go on to get an MBA in supply chain?
That's a great question. I don't know the percentage, but Professor Webb might.
I don't know a percentage. I'll just to be, again, quite frank, the MBAs as a degree has been struggling over the last few years. I would love for it to start increasing. We'll see, but I would guess probably about half. We do have students now that are choosing to, instead of an MBA, or getting a Master's of Analytics, but I have received emails in the past couple of weeks from 2 students, one that just got into Harvard Business School and one that got into Stanford Graduate School. So BYU has a good reputation, and getting into top tier MBA programs is not a problem at all. I wish I could answer you with, like, a really solid number, but I don't have it.
I actually do have something to say about the MBA program, or just an MBA in general, because that's something I'm looking into. And a couple of months ago, I had an opportunity to go with a bunch of women to Harvard Business School, and they talked to us about their MBA program. And when I told them that I was in supply chain, they were really intrigued by that. They're like, "Oh, that's a great, unique, important degree that will make you stand out and kind of give you more, like, some technical skills." And so I didn't really think beforehand. It didn't really occur to me. But when I told the missions there about what I was majoring in, that was something really interesting to them, and again, very relevant to today's business world, and something I think makes you stand out and is unique, because not every there's a lot of people who have, like, general business degrees, but it's a very particular, very technical degree. So just some feedback from, obviously, to be more qualified besides just getting a degree in supply chain to go to Harvard. But that was a positive feedback, that's something they were interested in.
And so actually a really quick follow-up to that, are the opportunities in supply chain, especially coming right out of, like, an MBA program, like, are the opportunities quite increased? Well, I guess kind of what I'm asking is it significantly worth it to pursue an MBA in supply chain?
So there's kind of 2 reasons to do an MBA. One is you're transitioning. So I'll give you an example right now. In our MBA class we have right now, there are 2 students that got their undergraduate degrees in accounting. And once they got out and started doing accounting, they just kind of said, yeah, this is not what I want to be. And so they realized that there was no way to just make a clean break from the accounting program, so they came back on an MBA. Second reason to get an MBA is you've kind of hit the ceiling of what a bachelor's degree is going to do for you in your job or in your career. And that's where we get a lot of people that have done their undergraduate degrees in supply chain coming back to get their MBA and then stepping up to the next level. So normally what I see is these people are coming in making 80 to 85,000 a year, and then they come to the MBA and it bumps them up 20,000 in salary, but it also bumps them up 3 levels of responsibility. So now they're 2 steps away from, or 3 steps away from the executive offices instead of being 5 or 6 steps away.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Chase. Okay, so Katie asked, what do you guys love most about the supply chain program? Carly or Professor Webb said the students. That's very kind of you. Carly said, I have 3 favorite parts of supply chain: the people, the fun, creative problem solving, and the opportunities. And Sophie, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I would definitely say that I really like how involved, Professor Webb mentioned this, but how involved the professors are. I genuinely think that the professors want to see every student succeed. And so that's something that really intrigued me about the supply chain program that I didn't see necessarily in some other programs. And so once I've gotten into the major, something that I really like is just the opportunities, or future different career opportunities. It's not like you have to just do one thing in supply chain and that there's only one thing that you can do. There's just a wide variety of different companies you can work for and different things you can do within that company. And so I just think the idea of having a lot of opportunities and not being stuck to one thing is something that makes me feel good and comfortable and confident about my future.
Thanks, Sophie. Okay, so Kyle asked, do you feel supply chain undergrad ceiling is pretty low? Would it become essential to get an MBA if you wanted any chance of further career development? And I'll let Professor Webb talk about this. I guess one thing I will mention is I really think it depends on what you go into, because there's so many options in supply chain of what kind of career you can have. So I do think that probably definitely impacts it. In my case, I'm doing tech consulting, so I'll be implementing supply chain software for companies that's made by Microsoft. And it's actually been kind of a challenge for me in regards to, as I'm looking to get an MBA, if I go get an MBA, I will actually be losing pay. Does that make sense? Like I don't need to go back to get an MBA to keep doing what I'm doing, because it's just not essential for my career path. And by doing so, like I'm not going to get paid anymore, and I'll get paid more than an MBA by the time I end up going back to get an MBA. And so for my situation, I'm studying and preparing just in case I want to pivot my career into something else. But in order to advance in my particular industry in tech, it actually wouldn't benefit me at all. I will do just fine without an MBA. So that's his perspective from what I'm going into. But again, I think it depends on the industry, and maybe Professor Webb can speak a little bit more to that in general.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little just direct for a second. This is really an eat what you kill career field. It is really what you make of it. And there are some companies like some of the consulting companies, if you really want to move up in the advisory consulting side, they get more money if you have an MBA, so they can bill you out at a higher rate. So in order to get promoted, you need an MBA. On the manufacturing side, it is, if you're a hard worker doing great, you don't need an MBA. I'm very biased here, but I think everyone should get a graduate degree, because the MBA doesn't just teach you about how to make more money. It builds your network in a way that nothing else can. So you go back to school, you get around these people that are also in your career field. You get 3 years down the road and another pandemic comes along, you lose your job. You have a network of people you can pick up and call and talk to that you know are at about the same level as you. So I think that's a good thing. The other question, let me see where that is. And no, I don't think the undergrad ceiling is pretty low. I think it's kind of what you make of it. I think if you want to maximize your potential, the MBA just puts the letters behind your name that people expect to see there. What's my opinion on finishing out the MBA first before entering the workforce? No quality MBA program is going to allow you to do that. The very best MBA programs want a minimum of 3 years and preferably around 5 years experience. Here's my recommendation with that. You're going to leave here, you're going to be making low 60s. If you're in consulting, closer to 70. Live on about half of that, sock away that money. And when you go back and get your MBA, you're not going to make any sacrifices. You'll just keep living like you've been living for the last 3 to 4 years. So again, most good MBA programs require 3 to 5 years of experience. BYU was just ranked number 30 in the country for MBA programs. We won't even look at someone unless they have at least 3 years experience.
Okay, another question I think that's important says, how much of a focus is there on analytics/mathematical analysis in the supply chain major, and what types of careers are closely linked to analytics in the supply chain area? We've been fortunate that I think especially this past year, there's been an increased focus on analytics as we've got a really great professor who graduated from MIT come teach a operation analytics class. And we've been able to build a lot of analytics skill set through that class, as well as in Professor Webb's class. He gives us a set of data has 40,000 rows, which especially at the time seems very overwhelming because you've never seen something that big. But then you go to your internship, and I interned at Walmart, and my first data that I pulled was 40 million rows, and so that was very intimidating. But I was prepared for it because we had worked throughout the year in analytics, and I felt pretty confident, especially compared to the other peers, other interns. I had some experience. So it is important. I think honestly nowadays in any career field, if you have analytic experience, it's really, really important and something very valued. But I also want to say, I've heard students worry that they're like not super mathematical, they're not super analytical, and so they're like, well, maybe I should do supply chain because I'm not really great at those things. And again, as we mentioned before, you can do so many different things in supply chain. If you don't want to go be a business, analyst and just work with data all day, you don't have to do that. There's other career paths where you're working more with people, you're doing more negotiations, you're traveling. But again, at the end of the day, you still have some data, but it's just not as heavy in that area. And so there's options for kind of whatever you want to go to. You can tailor your career for that. It's not just like you just go into analytics. But if that's something you're interested in, you'll be super sought after by recruiters. You have anything to add to that, Professor Webb?
No, I think it's a great answer. I think the more analytical you can become, it adds value to you. And really that's what your business education is all about, is making yourself as valuable as possible to yourself, to your community, to your work. And analytics is more about a way of thinking. The data drives your decision making, and you're not just making up stuff as you go. So to me, it's the more analytics you can get, the better. But like MJ said, a lot of the jobs in supply chain, if you're not super analytical, these jobs really reward people.
Yeah.
And if I could just add something to that, and you guys have both just touched on it a little bit, is that if you aren't super analytical, and so hearing about classes that are focused on analytics and working with a lot of data intimidate you, like that's okay. I was really intimidated going into Professor Webb's class because I heard about these huge projects that required all this work and analysis, and I had no experience. Like IS 201 was the most experience that I had, and I didn't have to take that to get into the program. I took that after the program, after the junior core. So I mean, I had no experience with that, but that's what's so great about the program is the professors are there to help teach you those things. They don't expect you to just have all of those skills. By taking those classes, you develop those hard skills, and then always working in groups and working with people to solve different problems really helps you to develop those soft skills. So I would just say, don't be intimidated. If you're hardworking and passionate about it, then you'll be able to be successful.
Yeah, great point, Sophie. Okay, so I think the last question we have here is, what's the best way to get into a more specialized field, such as working in the oil industry or medical field? Again, maybe Professor Webb has a better answer than I do, but I would just say by networking with people that are in those industries, we have a lot of alumni that have gone to a lot of different places. You start talking to them, and they can help you get a job at those type of companies. But I think the important part to realize is that there are opportunities in supply chain in those industries. And if that's what you want to go into, you can totally make that happen. I know in regards to the oil industry, we have somebody in our program, that's what he wanted to go into. And he got an offer from a company in the oil industry. So I know there's an option there. And then we do have some students that have gone into the medical field. And I know that's a big thing nowadays. It's really important. So basically networking. I know that's probably a really, broad answer, but the opportunities are there. Eric Doman's in charge of our career placement, and you just talk with him and he can put you in contact with some companies. Would a chemistry minor be helpful in those industries? Professor Webb, do you have any insight into that? Can you guys hear him?
No, I think you're muted, Professor Webb.
There, I fixed it.
Okay. I was like, I don't know, it's just, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah, any science minor is going to be a great thing. A lot of our companies do production, or oil. I mean, you mentioned oil, but you think about Dow Chemicals, some of these, even in the tech side. Rinchem, one of our biggest, they're the biggest warehousing company in the world for hazardous materials for the tech industry. It was founded by BYU grads. So people love that hard science. Employers love that hard science supply chain mix. I will also mention, though, that languages come in helpful. And you name the language, there is a supply chain there that needs someone that understands the culture and the language. So those are incredibly helpful. Statistics, economics, even, and I almost hesitate to say this because people make fun of it all the time, but I'm actually a liberal arts undergrad, and I've found just that way of thinking of taking a more holistic view of the world and understanding the world a little bit more, I think is very helpful. So, yeah.
Okay, then just a follow up to that, would a second major in a language be beneficial, or would a minor suffice? I would assume if you can speak the language, you can speak the language. I don't know if they look for if you have a major or minor. I would think a minor would suffice, but maybe, again, Professor Webb, you have insight on that?
Minors never hurt. I don't think many people get hired because of their minors, but yeah, minors never hurt.
Yeah, I think anything you can do to set you apart. We have a couple students who have majored in Spanish, so they've double majored in Spanish and supply chain. We also have a food science double major, I think, if I remember correctly. So we have some students who double major. I think it depends on your credits, and that would definitely, I think, help set you apart in some way, but I would assume a minor would suffice as long as you can speak the language, then I think that counts. Okay, so we'll stay on a little bit longer for those who have more questions and want to ask us those. But for everybody else, we can let you go. We'll post this info session, this video, as well as we'll send you all the slides and the resume format and any additional information that we have. Again, once again, just feel free to reach out to us. We are here to help you, especially the next couple months. If you need help with your resumes, your essays, or questions in general, Sophie, Carly, and I want to maybe mention that I promise there are males in the program. Usually we have the opposite problem, right? But I know there's all females on today, but I don't know, the guys are like sitting on the beach or something somewhere. I don't know what they are. But there are males in the program. We can connect you with some of them if that's helpful. Or if you have a specific industry you're interested in, if you reach out to us, we can connect you with a student who's in that industry and you can ask them more questions. So with that in mind, we'll let you go. For those who don't have any more questions, and those who do, we'll stay on it for a couple more minutes and answer those. So thanks for joining us. So now we're dropping in numbers now.